I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. Do not adjust your television sets or your internet sets or whatever you are using to view our faces. It is Thursday. Thursday night football is kicking off in just about 45 minutes. We will be a nice lead up to the game for you this week. We are going a day early this week because one of us, namely the one that's talking, has a conflict tomorrow. But Dennis, on Tuesday, we both, I think, picked the Bills. I'm sticking with the Bills. Anything changed for you?
Not at all. I'm going to ride with the Bills.
So we will see the Bills and the Buccaneers are kicking off, and we will see how that goes. Hopefully, we both get another W. We are going to dive into the rest of the Week 8 games, and that starts on Sunday morning. There are no buys this week, by the way, for reasons surpassing understanding. There's no buys this week. There's no buys in Week 12, which is Thanksgiving. But in between, we have like 6 teams on a bye. Dennis, how do you make sense of this schedule?
I don't. You know, they use the supercomputer to calculate it, and it runs all of these scenarios. And, you know, if I didn't know better, I'd swear that it's just Arthur Smith, you know, figuring it out and going, hey, fuck them fantasy guys. We're going to go 6 buys this week and none the next week. I hate fantasy.
Well, I don't remember them doing this last year where in the middle of all the bye weeks, you just had a week where everybody was playing. So it kind of threw me off guard. If it's catching you off guard, at least you have a lot of choices. And that begins Sunday morning as the Los Angeles Rams, who are 3-4, travel to battle the 4-2 Dallas Cowboys. Dennis, for the Rams, we've been excited about Cooper Kupp's return. Puka Nacua has been great. You're firing them up, but with the kind of weird Malou in the backfield, is there anyone else on the Rams that you're excited about against a good Cowboys defense?
Yeah, Darrell Henderson. I mean, not really.
I'm so worried Zach Evans is going to be this week's Amari DeMarcado.
So the Cowboys give up the 10th most fantasy points to tight ends, and we've seen Tyler Higbee have good games. He just has faded this season. Tutu Atwell plays, he puts up some big plays. You know, Henderson and Freeman are Jags, and for whatever reason, Evans just is quote unquote not ready. With no one on buys, I think I'd be hard pressed to have, Henderson or Freeman or even Higbee in my starting lineup.
Yeah, I feel the same. For the Cowboys, Tony Pollard, we were excited to see him this year. He is RB13 on the season coming into the week, but that's been largely thanks to the PPR points of getting a lot of receptions. He's coming back from that broken leg, suffered in the playoffs, should be a few weeks stronger, coming off a bye week, now facing a defense that gave up 3 rushing touchdowns last week. How are you feeling about Tony Pollard?
I'd feel a lot better if the Rams didn't give up the 8th fewest receptions and 2nd fewest receiving yards to running backs. They're not terrible against the run either. So, they're about 14th or 15th in yards against the run. So it's not like teams are like, we can just run all over the Rams so we don't have to throw the ball to our running backs. think CeeDee Lamb's going to have a good game. It's going to be a nice game for him to bounce back. The real question is going to be, can they keep the pressure off of Dak Prescott? Because when he gets hurried, I mean, I don't know if it's just because he's gotten older or what it is, or maybe it's always been there, and because he doesn't have Zeke to bail him out now, and Tony Pollard isn't that level, these, subpar games don't get covered up as much.
I am taking the Cowboys.
So am I.
Next up, we have an intriguing battle in the NFC North, the 3-4 Minnesota Vikings at the 2-4 Green Bay Packers. Dennis, how are you approaching this Vikings backfield?
With trepidation. So looking at the game last week, Akers had the most carries, 10-8, and he looked explosive, but he didn't have the, his wide yards per carry was 3.1 versus 4.9 for Madison. Madison, broke off the bigger runs. I'm gonna go back to the old refrain: nobody's on buys unless I have to absolutely start a Vikings running back. I'm going to avoid it. Now, Akers had 3 targets and Madison had 3 targets as well. The difference was Akers 30 yards and Madison's 3 yards. Probably happenstance. With Jordan Addison, I don't know. I'm probably avoiding the Vikings running game, but there are leagues out there. Somebody's going to be starting one of these guys.
Well, I mean, you have to start most leagues. You have to start 2 running backs anyway, and even though they're all the teams playing, there are a lot of tragic backfields out there right now. It's tough sledding. I mean, I'm kind of with you. It's probably Madison, but I don't feel incredibly good about it. When I was looking at running back rankings this week, after about 10, I started questioning my sanity. So, speaking of running backs that'll have you questioning your sanity, Aaron Jones returned last week, but they made a kind of an announcement as the game was going. I won't blame you if you weren't, tuning into Packers Broncos like it was an important game to you, but apparently Aaron Jones is on a snap count, and that certainly was reflective of the way he seemed to split with A.J. Dillon last week. Didn't practice Wednesday because he was sore, which they said was to be expected. You figure he'll play, but I also thought the Vikings defense handled Christian McCaffrey pretty well on Monday night. I know McCaffrey had 2 touchdowns, but he wasn't tearing the world up. So how are you feeling about Aaron Jones?
So I think Jones is going to keep bouncing back, getting his feet under him. All right, he had a snap count last week that we were not aware of. It'll increase a little bit this week. He's an explosive back. He's good in the passing game. And, Dillon performed pretty well last week. Jones is the better back, even on a snap count. I like Jones. The bigger issue for me is Jordan Love's inconsistency with completions. The 2 of his last 3 games, he's been over 60%, but his first 4 games, he didn't breach 56%. So, 5 out of 7 games under 60% isn't great. And when your quarterback can't complete passes with frequency, it means you can stock the line and keep the team from running the ball. I like Jones's talent. I think he's still got a lot left in the tank, but he's a little dinged up. He's a flex play.
I'm taking the Vikings in this one.
I think I'm begrudgingly taking the Vikings as well.
Next up, the 4-3 Atlanta Falcons at the 2-4 Tennessee Titans. Dennis, Bijan Robinson was hardly involved last week. No reports of a recurrence of that injury, but he's facing a little bit of a tougher rush defense in Tennessee. Any trepidation throwing Bijan out there?
The trepidation with Bijan is that Arthur Smith hates fantasy football and doesn't seem to understand that what's good for fantasy is good for the Falcons. Lots of yards and touchdowns for Bijan Robinson is good for the Falcons. I don't know if they taught him that in FedEx school. Clearly, he didn't. He must have skipped that class. But and I loved Tyler Algier last year. I was very disappointed that the Falcons drafted Bijan because I thought Algier played really well. Whether it's Algier just has a bigger presence that is more reminiscent of Derrick Henry, and that's why Smith can't keep himself from using him. I don't know. I know migraines which is something I don't understand because I don't get them, uh, are a serious thing. And when you don't feel right in your head, the first thing I thought of was concussion symptoms because we saw that this week with uh, Brock Purdy. Made it through the game, cleared protocol and everything, and a couple days later he's showing symptoms. So I'm thinking, well, maybe something happened in practice. Maybe he's been toughing it out in practice after last week's game, and things just caught up with him. I don't know for sure what it is. He had a headache, um, didn't feel right, whatever it was. I think it was a legitimate issue. I don't know that it was reported in the best fashion. Um, but I think you can expect Bijan to be back in line for his 12 carries.
On the flip side, there have been rumors the Falcons are looking to acquire Derrick Henry, so it'll be interesting to see what happens after this. If they do that, I pray to God they trade one of those other running backs, or else that's going to be a nightmare. But it's not looking like Ryan Tannehill's going to play. In fact, they've come out and said they're preparing Will Levis to start. They have also said they would play both Will Levis and Malik Willis. Do either interest you?
Yeah, if I'm, trying to go winless and get the 101, both of them interest me. Um, I, I I don't know what to expect from Will Levis. They've watched Will Levis since they drafted him in April or May, whenever it was. They've had Malik Willis there for now a year and a half, and they deemed Malik Willis to be the better candidate last week. And then he got in there, and they were like, "What the hell are we doing?" Um, but
Which I thought he didn't play too bad.
he didn't. But he didn't play good either. It was, he's not a great thrower of the football. Um, I don't think he sees the field real well. Needs more repetitions. But I don't know that you're going to get much more from Levis. It isn't like he didn't turn the ball over in college. He had some issues with that. He's got a big arm. He's a big guy, and maybe he'll be an answer. But whether or not he's the answer is to be determined.
He might be the answer, but what is the question? The question is no question for me. I'm taking the Falcons.
Me as well.
Next up, the 3-4 New Orleans Saints at the 3-4 Indianapolis Colts.
Can't wait
Dennis,
for the Rams, Packers, and Titans to win.
God. We haven't seen a lot of consistency recently from Derek Carr and the passing game. They had a little bit of a mini bye after playing last Thursday. Do you think they can get back on track?
Him and Chris Olave are certainly not on the same page, it seems. And they need to be. Now, I think part of the issue is that Derek Carr is not naturally a guy that likes to go downfield. And that's a big part of Chris Olave's game. And it's not working well between the two of them. There's some flashes that, we've got some games where Olave's putting up good numbers. I think Derek Carr is who Derek Carr is. Why they're still keeping Jameis Winston on the bench, I don't know. I mean, maybe at this point, Jameis is like, look, you're going to pay me, however many millions of dollars over 3 years. It may be a situation where Jameis, I don't know if you remember Happy Days. At one point, Ralph Malph was on the basketball bench and he ripped off his sweats to go in the game, and he was dressed in street clothes because he never played. It's like Jameis will have his, the cape over him, and they're going to be like, Jameis, go in. Takes it off, and he's wearing street clothes. So I don't know. They kept him around. They gave him some money to stay, and they deemed Derek Carr to be the better guy. I don't know. I don't see it.
I guess we'll see if they take a step forward. Meanwhile, for the Colts, we've seen Michael Pittman, now wide receiver 14 on the season. Josh Downs, wide receiver 27 on the season. Seem to be having some chemistry there with Gardner Minshew. The Saints have a decent defense and a good secondary. How are you feeling about those guys heading into this week?
Gardner isn't a guy that's going to pick the team up, put him on his shoulders, and carry him to victory. He's a good story that's going to keep the ball close to he's not going to make a ton of deep throws. He's keeping it close to the line of scrimmage. He loves Josh Downs. And Anthony Richardson was throwing the ball to Downs fairly frequently as well. So it's not like it's a complete surprise. But, Pittman, if it wasn't for the 75-yard touchdown last week, his day would have been Gabe Davisian, and that's not good for us. I don't think we can count on a 75-yard touchdown every week. But I think with Taylor and Zach Moss, they've got an effective running game, and they're throwing the ball to Taylor at a pretty good clip now. I think Pittman is going to be just fine. Alec Pierce seems to be rounding into shape after being banged up. And I like Josh Downs. Downs is the second receiver that I would want. I'm okay flexing him. I think Pittman's a wide receiver too at this point. So let's let Minshew play.
I'm taking the Saints.
I'm going to go with the Colts.
I knew it was going to happen. Next up, the 2-5 New England Patriots at the 5-2 Miami Dolphins. Dennis, in the backfield for the Patriots, we've seen Ramondre Stevenson getting a lot of receptions, but he's definitely been splitting the groundwork with Ezekiel Elliott, who's also seemed to have decent luck finding touchdowns. How are you playing that backfield?
I don't have faith that Zeke is going to be consistent enough to be startable. If you're starting Zeke, it's your last flex spot, and you're literally hoping for 35 yards and him falling into the end zone. I know they throw the ball at him 2 or 3 times a game as well. I'm going to ride Stevenson. He's the better back, the fresher back, the more explosive back. I'm good. I'm good with Stevenson, and I'm avoiding Zeke as much as it pains me to say that.
For the Dolphins, Raheem Mostert came in as running back 2 overall going into week 7. They really bottled him up in the first half in Philadelphia. Did not have a big game. Do you think he can have a bounce back game? You figure the Patriots will probably be keying in on Tyreek Hill. Do you think we can see a bounce back game for Mostert?
I mean, does it matter if they key in on Tyreek Hill? It does. It seems that, I think it was Kyle Brandt or somebody that was talking about Tyreek Hill's propensity to run away from his own end zone when he's catching passes, but then he turns around and run, he'll catch the ball and he's going backwards faster than anybody else on the field, but he's still gaining positive yardage because he just gets around the defense and gets upfield. I think Tyreek Hill is going to be able to keep the offense or the defense honest. New England is giving up the Oh, that's rushing attempts. I was looking for wide receivers. No, I was looking at rushing attempts. New England's average against the run. You know, they're a team that I think makes plays when they have to. The numbers don't always look great, and it kind of shows in their 2-5 record. So I think Mostert will get some play. I think Jeff Wilson's going to get more run than he did last week. You know, A-Chain's still not back. Ahmed is there, but I think Mostert's going to be the lead back, and I'm comfortable starting him.
Yeah, until last week, he had pretty phenomenal success finding the end zone. I think he will probably find the end zone again. I am taking the Miami Dolphins.
I am as well.
How can you not? Next up, let me go back to the sheet, is the 3-3 New York Jets at the 2-5 New York Giants, a battle of New York. It's kind of ironic that this is considered a home game for the Giants since it's really a home game for both teams. Dennis, before heading into the bye, Zach Wilson got the Jets. They played very tough against Kansas City, and then they got a couple of wins against the Broncos and the Eagles to move to 3-3 to start making some noise in the AFC again. Are you starting to believe that maybe they can get it done with Zach Wilson?
You know, I think that defense is good enough to carry them through some close games, and Zach Wilson just needs to make some plays here and there. He's got to get the ball to Garrett Wilson, like do that. Get the ball to Breece Hall, do that. He's got his completion percentage creeped up over 60%. Needs to keep improving that. The 4 to 5 touchdown to interception ratio needs to get better. He's turned the ball over more times than you would like to see, but you know, he's in a situation where I don't know how prepared he was mentally. You know, when Aaron Rodgers comes over, I think you look at the situation and you're like, I'm carrying a clipboard. That's all I'm doing all year. You know, and 4 snaps into it, it's like, rise and shine. And
probably didn't expect 4 snaps in that he.
I think he's doing okay. Is he going to be, you know, is this going to save his career? You know, he's going to be a backup. And I don't think when this contract expires, I don't know that the Jets are going to try to keep him around to salvage him for when Aaron Rodgers' career is finally over. I think they're going to be moving on.
Meanwhile, the Giants have been something of a mash unit of late. Daniel Jones has had limited practice, but still is not cleared for contact. It's very possible we see Tyrod Taylor again. Taylor has had pretty good chemistry with Darren Waller the last couple of weeks. Do you think they can keep that up?
I hope so. Here's the weird thing to me. Daniel Jones is a very mobile quarterback. And Tyrod Taylor is a very mobile quarterback. Yet only one of them has been able to avoid the rush and get the ball downfield deeper. I mean, Daniel Jones could not get the ball downfield. But Tyrod Taylor, he's getting the ball downfield to Slayton. He's getting it downfield to Jalen Hyatt. And he looks better. I don't know. And Waller, he's going up against, let's see, the Jets are about 12th in yardage to tight ends, about middle of the pack in receptions to tight ends. So if Tyrod Taylor can continue to avoid the rush, Darren Waller can do it again. You know, it's going to be easier, I think, to go to Waller than it is to go to the wide receivers with the cornerbacks that the Jets bring to the table.
I am taking the Jets in this one.
Yeah, so am I. As much as it hurts me, I want to see Brian Daboll do well. We thought he was a year early last year. I don't think we thought he was a year early for this.
Next up, a pretty intriguing game: the 5-2 Jacksonville Jaguars at the 4-2 Pittsburgh Steelers. Dennis A. Jones still did not practice on Thursday, so not anything close to a lock to play on Sunday. But we know we're going to see Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley, and Kirk has been the better of the two for most of this season. How are you approaching the wide receivers for the Jags?
Yeah. So Ridley has been getting, he got a ton of volume in the first game, and then it's dropped off precipitously. Evan Ingram's been getting really good volume. Ridley's really the receiver 3 behind Kirk and Ingram right now. I think that it's a situation where Trevor Lawrence has kind of taken what's been given to him. And in some schemes, Christian Kirk is getting open more. And so he's going there. Whether it means he's lost confidence in Ridley, I don't know. It's that's a tough situation to call. What is it? Ridley's got a 56% catch rate versus Kirk's 70.9. I think we're going to see games where Ridley performs more like he did the first couple games. But right now, I think you're looking at it. Kirk is a wide receiver 2, and Ridley is a wide receiver 3-4.
For the Steelers, we continue to see this kind of split in touches between Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Both of them got touchdowns last week. I know it's a struggle for me every week as I look at whether I feel comfortable starting Najee Harris. How are you feeling about this backfield for the Steelers?
So Harris's numbers look fine, except he's not getting enough volume. And I get it. Oh, we want our backs to be like Devin A-Chain and put up 100 yards on 12 carries and 3 touchdowns. That just doesn't happen enough. And Jaylen Warren isn't providing that either. And I don't think Jaylen Warren can hold up to 20 carries a game. But you've got to have Warren involved. And so you just have to take what you get with Najee, the goal line stuff, 12, maybe 15 carries at 3.8 to 4.1 yards per carry with a couple targets here and there. And hope he starts to punch it into the end zone. If Kenny Pickett kind of starts to come on and the passing game starts to click better with Deontay Johnson back and George Pickens continuing to ascend, I think that's going to make things easier for the offensive line and for the running game writ large. So I'm not like running out and trying to buy shares of Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren for that matter. But I think you consider both of them flex plays.
I am taking the Jaguars in this one.
I was looking for reasons to take the Steelers, and I just couldn't talk myself into it, so I'm taking the Jags.
Next up, the 6-1 Philadelphia Eagles at the 3-4 Washington Commanders. Dennis, DeAndre Swift seems to have taken control of that backfield. How are you feeling about him this week?
Fired up and ready to go. I mean, he's getting it done. The only thing that would make it better is if he got goal line carries. But man,
I mean, he did get one of his touchdowns the first time they played Washington, so maybe you'll get your wish.
It's hard to argue with the efficacy of the tush push, but man, I'd love to see the running back give him a couple carries down there.
Maybe they can push DeAndre's tush.
Maybe if he could get if they could split the goal line carries 50-50, I think it would be so much better for fantasy.
Have you noticed that Philadelphia is trying to get people to adopt the new moniker for that being the brotherly shove? Apparently, they don't like the brotherly shove. Sam Howell had a pretty decent game, keeping Washington in it with the Eagles the first time they played. Do you think he can get it going this week?
So what are we? We're looking at what, 7 sacks for Sam Howell?
Well, he has 19 on the season, so
Oh, he's got to have more than that.
I thought that's
He's
what they said on the radio.
no, I think he's on pace for 100. So I think
Maybe it was 19 the last couple of weeks.
the best thing he has going for him is that Terry McLaurin plays really well against NFC.
Oh yeah, 40 sacks.
Yeah. So McLaurin plays well against the NFC East. Curtis Samuel's been pretty consistent. The running game has started to get fairly pedestrian, and last week was the first week that Brian Robinson played under 50% of the snaps. So that makes me a little bit nervous going up against the Eagles, whom we've seen can put up points fast and furious. And if that happens, that's not good for Brian Robinson. But if the Eagles are putting up lots of points, I mean, Sam Howell is going to be chucking it. He could put up 50 passes, 55 passes, and while he may get sacked a dozen times, old boy's tough.
Yeah, he threw it 41 times in their first meeting, was sacked 5 times. So I am taking the Eagles.
So am I.
Next up, we have a fun matchup of the number 1 and number 2 overall draft picks, the 3-3 Houston Texans at the 0-6 Carolina Panthers. Dennis, CJ Stroud comes in, quarterback 14 currently. He has looked pretty good this season, might be one of the contenders for Rookie of the Year. Do you think he shows out against the player that was taken before him?
I think he shows out. I don't think Bryce Young has anything to do with it. I think CJ Stroud.
The defense that's a rumor for Carolina might have more to do with it.
Well, no, I think they're close enough friends that he didn't take it personal when Young was drafted. Did he think maybe he should have went? Probably. But would he have been in a better situation if he did go? I think he's happy with Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz and Tank Dell. Singletary started to get some stuff going in the running game, and maybe that will spur Dameon Pierce to get a little bit going in the running game. Robert Woods is playing steady. And CJ Stroud, they believe in him down there. I believe in him. I think he's QB 14 on the season right now, and he's a easy start in Superflex leagues, and in 1 QB leagues, he's very streamable, and I wouldn't have any questions about having him be a top 12 quarterback this week.
Meanwhile, for the Panthers, Miles Sanders is off the injury report. He and Chuba Hubbard split carries the last time they played together. How are you approaching this backfield?
So Hubbard has looked better than Miles Sanders. And as much as I want to stay on the Miles Sanders chuck wagon, I think it's time to let Chuba eat a little bit. Give him some opportunities and see if he can, 1, play on all 3 downs and handle the volume, and 2, stay healthy. You hate to see a guy lose his job because he gets injured, but he wasn't being super productive prior to that. So give Hubbard some runs, see what you got with him. Maybe he is that guy. And which will be unfortunate given that they signed Sanders to that $6 million a year contract. But I think if I have 1 flex spot left and I'm picking between Hubbard and Sanders this week, I'm taking Hubbard.
Yeah, I think I would too, but I'm taking the Texans in this game.
So am I.
Next up, the 4-2 Cleveland Browns at the 4-2 Seattle Seahawks. Deshaun Watson has already been ruled out. They said they were going to start PJ Walker. Jerome Ford not practicing, not looking good for him with an ankle injury. Can PJ Walker and company do it again for Cleveland?
I mean, I don't know that they've done it yet. I know they've won their last 2 games, but it's like it was a miracle against the 49ers, and Myles Garrett on the defense just putting the team on his back and carrying them to victory. It, I I want the Browns to be successful. I don't have any faith at all in PJ Walker. And as much as I would like to let Dorian Thompson Robinson go out there and earn his stripes, he played terrible when he got the chance. And, maybe the Seahawks are a little better matchup than the last time Walker went out or Robinson went out there. But yeah, it's tough. I I'm not, Kareem Hunt has a thigh bruise, and he's likely to be the lead back. I think we'll see Pierre Strong on some early down stuff, but I don't know how much I expect from Pierre Strong. Uh, Hopefully, they get the ball to Amari Cooper. At least make him fantasy relevant this week.
Speaking of receivers, we saw some good games from JSN and Jake Bobo last week. I don't see Metcalf listed on the injury report. Lockett was held out on Wednesday. They haven't updated today. How are you feeling about the Seahawks receivers?
Yeah, I like Metcalf, and hopefully he's good to go. The issue with the Seahawks receivers is Geno Smith. I mean, he's what, QB 19 on the year this year. He turned back into a pumpkin. Uh, like, who could have saw that coming? He was one quarterback for the first 7 years of his career. Then he was another
He's
one
actually
last year.
QB 22 now.
Oh, is he? Now he's back to the same quarterback he was the first 6 games of the year. I think the talent is there. I don't know how talented Bobo is. I think he's a cool story, but he's not he's not terribly athletically gifted. He made a beautiful catch for the touchdown. I had to have the conversation with my son about one shin equaling 2 feet and all that fun stuff. JSN came out and played well. And if Lockett's banged up, I think they trust JSN. They trust Lockett. I think you have to monitor the reports and see what's going on. And if Lockett's out, fire up JSN. If we keep hearing that Metcalf stays off the injury report, I think you got to start him as well, even with Geno performing the way he is.
Yeah, I like Metcalf the best. I'm almost at the point now where I feel like JSN and Tyler Lockett about the same favorability when you're looking at a flex spot. I am taking the Seahawks.
I'm taking the Seahawks too. I mean, I'd love if the Browns had Josh Dobbs or Sam Darnold instead of PJ Walker. I'd take Tyson Bagent.
I'll probably get to see him too. Next up, we have the 3-3 Cincinnati Bengals at the 5-2 San Francisco 49ers. First part of the season, a lot of the storyline for Cincinnati was Joe Burrow and that calf and how it seemed to be holding them back. He was getting better before they went into the bye, and now they've had the bye week. Do you expect to see more of the Joe Burrow of old this week?
Yeah. Actually, I just saw. I'm gonna call back to the previous game. Adam Schefter is reporting that Kenneth Walker and Tyler Lockett did not practice for the second straight day. So watch that closely. I think the bye week came at a great time. Burrow's calf seems to be getting healthier. I don't know if it'll be fully healthy at all this year. He clearly struggled early in the season with it, but it kept getting a little better and a little better and a little better. And a couple weeks ago, he made a couple plays on the move, and that you could see him getting some power back in his throws. With that calf, he wasn't able to push off. He's getting back to the point where you can count on him. I had a trade offer come in. What was it, Joe? Or no, yeah. What was it, Joe Burrow? Gosh, somebody sent me Joe Burrow for, is it Puka and somebody else? Puka and a lower tier quarterback. I couldn't accept it fast enough. So I think, I'm a believer in Joe Burrow. And now, granted, it's also a team I'm not terribly competitive this year, and so I'm buying Burrow, looking ahead to next year. Uh, I think Burrow is going to be fine, and unless he re-injures it, I think the current injury will just continue to get better.
Yeah, the nice thing, he and T. Higgins both off the current injury report. For the 49ers, as you mentioned, Brock Purdy developed concussion-like symptoms on the flight home Monday night, so he has entered the concussion protocol. Seems that he is unlikely to be able to clear it in time for them to play on Sunday because it's such a short turnaround. If that happens, we're going to see Sam Darnold. What would you expect to see from Sam Darnold?
I think Darnold will have a great game. He can athletically, Sam Darnold can do some things that Brock Purdy can't. He's a better runner. He's got a bigger arm. It'll come down to, can he make the right decisions? Purdy's biggest asset is he makes the right decisions almost every time, last game notwithstanding. Um, and so I think Darnold will be just fine. It doesn't hurt that you got Christian McCaffrey. So there's always that bailout. Ayuk will get the ball. George Kittle's there. They've got a lot of weapons, even with Deebo Samuel out. And it would be. This seems like it could be a game where we see, maybe a Juwan Jennings. Well, he's looked okay and he makes some plays. We could see a bigger game from Jennings because he plays on the second team, and so he typically is practicing with Sam Darnold, and there may be a pretty high comfort level there for Darnold. Not that I expect him to outproduce Brandon Ayuk, but he could be a flex-worthy, productive player this week.
He outproduced Ayuk last week, so
yeah. So if you don't throw him the ball in the second half, that's easy to do.
Sam Darnold's got more familiarity with the scout team, so I am taking the 49ers in this one.
I'm going with Joe Shiesty. I'm taking the Bengals.
Next up, the 5-2 Baltimore Ravens at the 1-6 Arizona Cardinals. Dennis, we've seen Lamar Jackson doing his thing on the ground, but how are you approaching that Ravens backfield? Any interest in Edwards or Justice Hill?
Not so much interested in Justice Hill. Edwards is a low-end flex at best. I'm not hanging my hat on his 80-yard touchdown last week. Lamar is playing great. Zay Flowers is having a good year. OBJ, when he's healthy, is being productive. Mark Andrews is doing Mark Andrews things. And Lamar is on pace to have career highs in several passing categories: attempts, yards, completion percentage. I think that Lamar and that Ravens team is going to continue to produce a victory here against the Cardinals.
For the Cardinals in the backfield, nobody's on the injury report, but the first full week without James Conner, we saw Keontae Ingram and Damian Williams. Last week it was all Amari DeMarcado. Are you taking a chance on anyone out of the Arizona backfield against the Ravens?
If I'm starting anybody, it's going to be DeMarcado. I think we saw with him last week that they're comfortable enough with him. He had 13 carries and 5 targets, so 22 opportunities. Well, the yardage, you'd like to see a little more yardage. I mean, he averaged 4.5 yards a carry. I think DeMarcado is going to be the guy until Connor comes back, and then DeMarcado is going to be the change of pace guy. I mean, Keontae Ingram just isn't it. And there's a reason Damian Williams was riding the pine on the practice squad or the couch for as long as he was. Kyler Murray's not on the injury report this week.
Yeah,
they don't expect him to play this week.
He's still on IR. He's still listed on the injury report.
No, that I saw a blurb today that he was not listed on the injury report. They
Kyler Murray
activated him.
is on the injury report. He's listed as out. He said he remains on the reserve pup list.
Okay. I'm not sure where I saw what I was
That's
reading.
for October 26th, which is today.
So I think Murray's coming back. They're gonna have him starting here in a week or two.
I still don't understand why. Makes no sense.
It does, I agree with you. I don't think it makes it, and we could very well see them go. They've activated his window to get him ready to play. They could go right up to it and say, "Oh, he's going to revert to season-ending IR now," just to, just to
See
keep
how
their
it goes.
names in the news.
I'm going to take the Ravens in this one.
So am I.
Next up, 6-1 Kansas City Chiefs at the 2-5 Denver Broncos. Dennis, the Chiefs reacquired Mecole Hardman. They've been getting some good play from Rashee Rice. How are you approaching the wide receivers for the Chiefs?
I think it's Rashee Rice and that's it. I was looking at the numbers yesterday and I was surprised that Kadarius Toney has more targets than Sky Moore. I thought Sky Moore
might have less catches though, based on what we've seen.
But I thought Sky Moore was. Did I think Sky Moore was gonna have a 1,000-yard season? Well, I said that I said early in the or not early in the offseason, but in the offseason, a hot take of mine was that Sky Moore would have 1,000 yards receiving. Clearly, it's not going to happen. But Rashee Rice has come on and he's gained the trust of Patrick Mahomes. He's earning targets and he's converting them. I'm very comfortable now starting Rashee Rice as a flex play and watch him go out and be like 2 for 5 for 16 this week. But he's the number one receiver there.
I'll clarify what I said. They said this about Kyler Murray. He wasn't on their Thursday injury report. The team came out and said he's not on the injury report because he remains on the reserve pup list and is out.
So what you're telling me is I should read both sentences in the blurb.
Maybe, but I mean, they goofed by not putting him on the injury report, so everyone just assumed he was all cleared. But usually, players coming off PUP or IR are officially listed as questionable going into their first game anyway, so it'd be weird. Denver has lost 16 consecutive games to the Chiefs. What chance do you give them of snapping that streak on Sunday?
I mean, blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while.
If only they had any nuts. I am taking the Broncos for no apparent reason.
Well, there's an apparent reason. You're a freaking Broncos homer. Of course you're taking the Broncos. I'm going with the Chiefs.
What I hear you saying is I like to suffer.
I hear you saying that you're loyal.
Sunday Night Football, the Chicago Bears 2-5 at the 2-4 Los Angeles Chargers. Dennis, it appears we're going to get Tyson Bagent again. What do you expect?
About 4.5 yards per attempt. 3 touchdowns from Deontay Foreman. No, so Bagent is an interesting story, and like for me, I'm kind of comparing his approach to things to Brock Purdy. Purdy was a low, like he was the last pick in the draft, and nothing was expected from him. And then he came in and he played well. And my reaction was, hey, maybe starting 50 games in college isn't a bad thing. He doesn't have a big arm. He's not very mobile. Well, we get Tyson Bagent here, and I was listening to him give an interview and he was asked something about the game being too big for him or something. And he goes, I started at quarterback my freshman year of high school. I started at quarterback for 4 years in high school, for 4 years in college. Because That's just what I do. And so he's always prepared like he's a starter. The talent level is something, and I get it. He played college at Shepherd College. It's not a juggernaut in Division 1A, but he's literally for 8 years he's been a starting quarterback. So being not overwhelmed by the situation, I guess is something we should have been able to expect. Now the production, he only had 14% of his throws were more than 10 yards. Everything was close to the line. The team was protecting him with that stuff and hammering the ball with Deontay Foreman. They'll probably try to continue to do the same thing against the Chargers this week. Whether or not they're successful or whether or not the Chargers get up and they have to be more aggressive throwing the ball, who knows? Let's have a good story.
In another good story for the Bears, Roschon Johnson's off the injury report, so maybe Deontay Foreman will have some company.
No, we don't need that. Did you see? Deontay Foreman was RB1 last week. He doesn't need any company.
Enjoy it while you last. We were excited to see Austin Eckler come back off of injury, but we got 10.2 points in his first game, 5.6 last week. Can you get it going against the Bears?
I mean, is somebody going to tell Austin Eckler he's been activated? I mean, this isn't the 25 points we're used to.
I know he was less than half of what Joshua Kelly had last week.
Yeah, I think he's going to be fine. The team is. I think the team is looking ahead to life without Austin Eckler, and while they're not doing it on the field yet, we've seen Brandon Staley maybe ain't as good a coach as he appeared that first year with the "I'm going for it on fourth down every time" approach. But Eckler's still a good receiver, and he has a nose for the end zone. I just think the game has to start to wait for the game to come back to him and get back in the natural flow of things. Herbert's used to playing without him now.
I mean, the Chargers, I think, are really preparing for life without Brandon Staley. That's what this whole season's been about. But I am going to take them for the victory on Sunday night.
I'm taking the Chargers as well.
Monday Night Football, the 3-4 Las Vegas Raiders at the 5-2 Detroit Lions. Dennis, looks like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be back. How are you approaching the Raiders for fantasy?
So the Raiders have a very narrow funnel, and so let me digress a bit. It was really easy before last Sunday when the Lions defense was awesome, and then last Sunday they got boat raced by the Ravens. Now, the Ravens offense is much different than the Raiders offense, even though if you say them really fast, they sound almost alike. But Garoppolo is going to be back, and he's going to throw the ball to Davante Adams, because when you have Davante Adams, that's what you do, is you throw him the ball. Myers,
unless you're Brian Hoyer.
Myers, who has some history in that style of offense, being from New England, he's going to get plenty of opportunity as well, and he's producing with it this year. And then Josh Jacobs. Let me see if I left my cheat sheet open from. I did a show in Ireland this morning, and I was talking about. I didn't leave it open. I was talking about Josh Jacobs. Jacobs he's making his hay right now in the passing game. He's like top 10 in targets for running backs. I think he's got a 14.7% market share, which is like fourth for running backs. And while he isn't converting a lot on the ground, his yards before contact is like 0.91, which is like 38th or 32nd. And mind you, these numbers may be off just a hair as I'm doing this from memory. Of all running backs with at least 50 carries. So it's easy to not have any explosive runs and not be super productive in the running game when you're literally getting hit like 3 feet after you're handed the ball. So I like Jacobs, and I think he can be productive, but for me, the pecking order for the Raiders is Adams, Myers, and Jacobs.
For the Lions, it looks like David Montgomery will be out again. Last week, that was good for Jahmyr Gibbs, who finished as running back 3 for the week and finally got unleashed. Will we see him unleashed again Monday night?
Yeah, well, I mean, what are they going to do? Give the ball to Craig Reynolds? I mean,
no. Goff is better at home usually, so maybe they'll boat race the Raiders. Nothing would make me happier.
No, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to get his, and Sam Laporta is going to get his, and Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get his. Gibbs is going to probably, provided he's healthy, he's going to be up there around 20 touches again. 10, 12, 14 carries, 8, 10, 12 targets. I'm here for it. That's what we drafted him for. You don't, Arthur Smith, take a look. You don't spend a top 12 draft pick on a running back to have him play second fiddle.
Can't wait for them to acquire Derrick Henry and then just give like 5, 5, 5, 5 to all of their running backs, including Cordero Patterson. I am taking the Detroit Lions.
I'm going Lions too. One pride, baby.
Well, that'll do it for the Week 8 preview, Dennis. People are going to have a couple of lonely days, plus they can dive into the Thursday night game. But how can they fill their time on Friday and Saturday?
They can go to their favorite podcast platform and hit that subscribe button. Get that download for us. Let's get those numbers up. Give us a rating and a review.
Hey, and the good news for those of you that stuck with us live, you really haven't missed anything on Thursday Night Football because it's still nothing, because neither of these teams is off to a hot start. That'll do it for us this week. We will see you again on Tuesday.